Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Witness. Today, we are going to be going through the Shadow Forest and finding out a little bit about this place. So, to make life a little bit easier, I have done all the puzzles, but I did reset them after just so that we can show a couple examples, but we don't have to go through the whole thing because I took a look at the time on it, and to do the whole thing, it took about 12 minutes, even kind of blasting through them as fast as possible, or as fast as I could possibly do it. So we're just going to go through a couple things, but basically, when you start off this area, you walk through this area. We'll talk about this in a little bit. I don't want to talk about it just this second. But your first thing you have to do, none of these panels are actually active at the start. The only thing that you can activate to start off with is this right here. And when you activate it, it opens the door. You can see this is really the first time, other than the glass house, where we're really dealing with man-made structures that aren't made of just those giant stone blocks. Everything here is made of metal. You can see that they're starting to cut down these trees. They're all going down here, so all the trees are going down to this area. We'll get to there soon. Not this episode, but we'll get there. We'll get there. But your first puzzle that you actually have to solve in this area is this one right here. And you can see there's no indications, there's no symbols, there's nothing like that. Basically, what you're doing on this is just drawing a line through the empty spaces. So this is actually very similar to what we were doing on in the monastery, which is why I decided to go with this area next. And you can see they just get a little bit progressively harder. Nothing all too crazy. After you activate them, this query area is actually entirely locked up. You have to activate the puzzles in this area to open those doors. But nothing all too crazy. This one's kind of cool, actually. I like this one, just because this one you can see that only half of it's actually active. And it's because of this metal door that you can't actually do something. So this man-made structure is actually stopping you from being able to solve this puzzle. So you have to open the door. It is on a timer, so it will close. But if you do it up here, nice and easy, gets you right through there. And that's basically your first section of this. Second section of this area, then you start getting a little bit harder problems. You can see that now there is metal on top of us, so it actually is leaving a shadow in the puzzles as well. Notice that the color of the background changes as well. On here, it's this orange color. And on here, now we've gone to this kind of like reddish magenta style color. But it works the exact same way, so what you're trying to do is just avoid the trees, the shadows of the trees, but you don't have to care about any of these man-made structures. So all of the man-made structures they're actually doing is just distracting you from the real problem. They're making it harder and harder, and you can see it keeps on going on and on. We aren't going to do all of these, but I think you get the idea. So that's your second section, and it leads you all the way up to here. When you get through here, it actually splits into two paths. So the first path we'll go is just this way. Very similar to what you're doing. Only now you get all of these metal structures that are, again, blocking your way through. So you can get the right angle on it. You can see that there's empty space all the way here. And then if you follow it up to what you're seeing on the actual metal, it goes up one, down, over. And these get more and more complex as you go through them as well. And eventually we get to puzzles that start actually having stuff like the wood taking care of what you're going to do on those puzzles. So you can see here that this puzzle wouldn't be able to be fully solved by itself. You actually need the wood in this, because even if you take away all of the wood there, it wouldn't actually line up with the puzzle panel at all. So the wood, the natural stuff, is actually helping you solve these puzzles instead of hindering you. Oh, if I know what I'm doing, which apparently I do not. Down, 2 down, 1, 2, 1. There we go. And so you can see that all of these natural structures start actually helping you. In these ones, the puzzle panel itself is actually angled, so on this one, if you push it up, it would have given you something that would probably get you that reflection. Now you actually have to use the rock, and it keeps on going up and up until you eventually get to this one. And this is your final puzzle in the area, where basically the whole thing is just right on the wood itself. That's the first area of this section. Second area is this part right over... where's the first panel for it? To find these. First panel is just right up here. There we go. And on this one, it's using a little bit different strategy. This one, you're actually following the branches. So you're not using the emptiness of the space. You're actually using the shadow of the trees themselves. Notice that all of these trees also have lost all of their leaves on it. So they are dying trees, probably because of the quarry area. Maybe not, who knows? But you can see it's all this all the way down. And it continues that way through it. Both of those sections unlock one side of this area right here. And then you get to your final puzzle. So if you unlock one side, you can do half of the puzzle. The other side unlocks another half just because this actually blocks the shadows in it. And the last section of this area is to go, and you start with the empty space, continues on into the shadow of the tree, goes back to empty space, and goes up and around, and that activates your laser for you. So this area is all represented by the trees, of course, everything else. We're going to start with an audio log and kind of get to know what's going on here.
66 times have these eyes beheld the changing scene of autumn. I have said enough about moonlight. Ask no more. Only listen to the voice of pines and cedars when no wind stirs. Leonin, 1711.
So that quote is from Rhiannon. She was actually a Zen teacher in the 1700s. Actually, I was reading up a little bit about it because I didn't really know who this person was at all. And it was actually a woman who was considered super, super beautiful. And to be able to study at the area she wanted to go to, the main monk said that she couldn't actually be allowed to go in because of her beauty would distract the other monks, so she actually disfigured her face just to be able to still study the Zen there. But the really cool part about this area is it talks about just listening to the environment, a very Zen-like experience, just take in the surroundings. And this whole area, this kind of autumn area, has absolutely no puzzles in it whatsoever except for this final one with the laser. There's not even the puzzle paneling, anything else. It's just this giant area of reflection. Cool thing as well is the only other really thing of note in this is that you can see these kind of pillars, and it looks very similar to a couple other areas we'll get to later, but at least from my belief, I bet you at one point in time there were statues on these. It looks like there were some statues. There's some evidence to show for that later on. We'll get to it as we get there. But kind of cool to know. And then when you get into the actual forest area that's being cut down, that's where you actually start getting the paneling. So it's really interesting that this whole area is about Zen, and you're kind of seeing what this man-made structures and everything else are doing to that Zen-like experience. They're actually making it a lot harder to appreciate the environment. Like when you go down here, you get your trees that are just broken, and these are nice, simple, easy problems, but you're getting blocked from all these man-made structures. It's what's making these puzzles actually hard. And when you're getting over to this side, all the metal over here is distracting you from it. You, instead of just being able to clearly see exactly where the empty space is, you have to use your deductive reasoning, everything else, just to be able to make it work. So you're seeing that natural beauty is kind of being taken away. You're not able to focus on it as much because there's other things in your environment. One other audio log that's in this area is actually up this hidden path right here, which is pretty cool. So you get these kind of orange crate structures. We've seen them a little bit. You're going to see a lot more of them throughout it. We're not going to talk about anything on it, but we'll just listen to the audio log.
In a sense, what modern physics is to the history of Western thought, Zen is to the development of the Eastern worldview, the ultimate refinement of more than 2,000 years of incisive debate, discussion, and critical development. Yet the difference between the two could hardly be more marked. Whereas physics is interested above all in theories, concepts, and formulas, Zen values only the concrete and the simple. Zen wants facts, not in the Western sense of things that are measurable and numerical, which are in fact abstractions, but as living, immediate, and tangible. Its approach to understanding is not to theorize, because it recognizes that previously accumulated ideas and knowledge, in other words, memories of all kinds, block the direct perception of reality. Therefore, Zen adopts an unusual approach. Its buildup involves language, which is unavoidable. Any method, even if it turns out to be an anti-method, has first to convey some background in order to be effective. But the way Zen uses language is always to point beyond language, beyond concepts to the concrete. David Darling, 1996.
Yeah, so that quote really does kind of summarize that Zen experience on it. It is to just take nature in as it is. It's not to be thinking about every single little thing on it. It's not to break it down, to analyze it. It's just to view nature in its own way, and that's going to give you these Zen-like experiences. Again, interesting to the monastery, because they are not very different concepts of Zen, but they are different concepts of Zen. We're going to see more proof of this again later on. But the monastery, you remember the puzzles for the monastery, you had to align yourself in the perfect position. And when you aligned yourself in that perfect position, the answer just showed itself to you. It was immediately right there. Where in these puzzles, it doesn't really matter what angle you're really at for them whatsoever. That puzzle either shows up or it doesn't. You can either see it or you can't see it. So this is two different schools of Zen, actually. One where you're just taking nature in as its own, taking the world in as it is. And then there's one where you're supposed to be kind of experiencing, the game quotes it as a mental catastrophe type of thing, until you get a sudden realization. And it really shows the difference of these two concepts, that in the monastery, you have to look for those kind of flashes of inspiration, and that's what actually gets you the solution to the puzzle. Where in this one, you're going very calmly through it. You're just kind of seeing it as it is, taking your time, don't need to focus on a specific area or look at it a specific way to be able to solve those puzzles. The other cool thing about this Zen is also based on I'm going to mispronounce this horribly, but Tao, Tao, Chinese philosophy, which focuses heavily on yin and yang. Cool thing is that at first we were only dealing with empty spaces, and then the puzzles do split, so you're still dealing with the empty spaces over here, but on this side you're actually dealing with the physical, the tangible. You're dealing with the shadows of the trees themselves. To be able to activate that actual laser, like you saw, you need to have both the empty space, being able to realize that, along with that tangibility. And in a Zen area, this is something that actually is inseparable. You have to have both of these. You can never just have one without the other. And you can see that pretty clearly in this. So this area is kind of your main dedication to that Zen culture, that kind of quiet, contemplative look, to be able to solve everything. If you saw as well, I showed it a little bit while the quote was playing, but you get this really, really cool scene of this lady that's just sitting under a tree. You can see it's coming from the actual, I think it's cloth. I'm pretty sure it's cloth with the scenery on it. The only other thing I want to talk about in this is the colors of the lines and everything else. So you can see that this green color, it's not the exact same green that we had in Symmetry Island. It's a little bit more yellowy, a little bit different shade of it, but that color persists through the entire thing. It's interesting that is a different color than the monastery, which is red. But like I was saying, the panel coloring also changes. So when you go down, you see that orange panel color, which is actually the same panel color as the monastery, that orange style. But as soon as you start getting these man-made structures blocking it, it goes into more of this magenta color as your background color on it. That continues all the way down until you get, it continues even to this. Now you can see it goes to a full purple color when you get these man-made structures underneath. And when you're looking at the tangible side of things, you get this blue color as your background, which is pretty cool because blue was the tangible stuff, the stuff that we could actually control in Symmetry Island, if you recall, which is pretty neat. The orange is taking it in as it was very similar to the monastery, which has that orange background. And when you start getting these distractions built right into it, then that starts changing your color more and more towards that purple foundation. So definitely, even the background colors on these areas are having an impact on how the thinking of that puzzle's supposed to be, which is pretty cool. Last but not least, we get one flower. You'll notice these flowers kicking around all the place, so just keep it in mind. We're going to see more of them as we go on. I love how the lines in the puzzles actually go beneath the earth, so it's meant to make it as non-distracting as possible. You don't want just these lines covering the whole thing, so it's pretty cool on that. But otherwise, that is the Shadow Forest. I'd love to hear what you guys think of this area. If you have any different opinions or anything else, please leave them in the comment below. And that's where we'll leave for today. Hope you guys really enjoyed the episode. We'll be back sometime next week with a new episode. We'll get everything going. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time in another episode of The Witness.